Ever get that feeling like you're peering behind a curtain, like something's hidden just out of sight?
Oh, absolutely. That curiosity about what lies beneath the surface.
Well, that's exactly the feeling we're diving into today. 1973, Stamford, Connecticut.
Yeah.
A seemingly ordinary town, but trust me, beneath the surface, there's a story that'll grab you.
A story that just begs to be unearthed.
Exactly. And we're going deep on this one, folks. The unsolved murder of Joe Pelichi.
Ah, the Pelichi case. A real head-scratcher.
It is. And we've got a stack of original news articles and interviews ready to untangle this whole thing.
Love it when we get our hands on those primary sources, real deal stuff.
Right. It's like stepping back in time, piecing together this puzzle of a life cut short, a community shaken, and an investigation, well, let's just say it went cold.
Classic cold case full of twists and turns. I can already tell this is going to be a good
Oh,
one.
you bet. But before we get into all the drama, the suspects, the evidence, let's start with Joe Pelichi himself. Who was this guy?
Joe, well, he was Mr. Stanford, practically. Ran the family restaurant, Pelici's, the place to be, you know?
Oh, yeah, I've heard about this place. Wasn't it like a local institution?
Absolutely, the heart of the town. Celebrities, politicians, everyday folks, all rubbing shoulders over a good meal.
The kind of place where everybody knows your name, huh?
You got it. And Joe was right there in the thick of it, charming, welcoming, making everyone feel like family. A real success story, the American dream, built on hard work and good food.
So picture this. February 4th, 1973, a Sunday. Joe's sister, Tony, goes looking for him, can't find him anywhere. And that's when she stumbles upon his car.
Abandoned.
Yep, on some quiet road, Wendover Lane, not exactly Joe's usual hangout.
And the car, what was the scene there?
Locked. But the center console was open, and something was missing.
Something important, I bet.
Joe's gun, .32 caliber pistol, kept it in the console, had a permit and everything.
Was he involved in anything, risky that he needed to carry?
Family always said no, nothing shady. But there was this situation, a bit of a love triangle, actually.
Ah, love triangles. Never a dull moment with those.
Right, so Joe was seeing this woman, Aida, and, well, her ex-husband, Fernando, was not thrilled about it.
Not one bit, I imagine.
Understatement of the year.
Yeah.
See, Fernando had a bit of a temper, and he'd made threats towards Joe.
The jealous ex-husband? Sounds like a prime suspect right out of the gate.
Yeah, he was definitely on the radar, especially when you consider what he was doing on the day Joe disappeared.
Oh, what was that?
Calling the restaurant nonstop, asking for Joe, even though he knew Joe wasn't working that Sunday.
Trying to establish an alibi, maybe?
Could be. And then there's this chilling conversation he had with Aida after Joe vanished. She confronted him about it, and he reportedly said, if I did anything to Joe, no one would ever find him because I'd throw him over a wall.
Those words would definitely come back to haunt him, especially considering what happened later. But hold on, before we get ahead of ourselves, we gotta address the elephant in the room.
The mob.
The mob. Stanford in the 70s, you couldn't ignore their presence. And whispers started swirling that maybe Joe had gotten mixed up in something he shouldn't have.
Gambling debts, shady business deals.
Exactly. The rumor mill went into overdrive. But Joe's family always maintained he was clean, his business was legitimate.
And the police. Did they buy the mob theory?
They seemed hesitant, at least at first. But you know how it is. Those rumors stick, and they can muddy the waters of an investigation real fast. So here we are. A missing man, a missing gun, a jealous ex-husband with a temper, whispers of mob ties, and a community holding its breath.
Quite the setup, right? But just as we're starting to zero in on our suspects, the investigation throws us a curveball.
Yeah.
A big one.
Oh, I love a good curveball. Lay it on me.
3 guns are found on a partially frozen reservoir in Greenwich.
3 guns. What's the connection?
2 of them belong to Joe, along with his car keys. But that third gun, that's where things get interesting. It was a .38 caliber revolver. Ballistics confirmed it was the murder weapon.
Whoa, hold on. So whoever used that gun didn't want it found. Tried to ditch it in the reservoir.
Exactly. But remember, it was only partially frozen. So much for the perfect disposal plan. And with that discovery, a new piece of the puzzle starts to glow a little brighter. A witness had reported seeing a powder blue Cadillac near Joe's abandoned car on Wendover Lane.
A powder blue Cadillac, you don't say. Anyone we know would drive a car like that.
Funny you should ask. Joe's brother-in-law, Joshua, was quite fond of his powder blue Cadillac.
Aw, the brother-in-law. Now things are getting spicy.
Oh, yeah. And Joshua, well, he wasn't exactly a fan of Joe's affair with Aida. Thought it was bringing shame on his sister, Frances, Joe's wife.
So another potential motive emerges. Family drama, always a good source of tension. What did Joshua have to say about being near Windover Lane that day?
Initially, he denied being anywhere near there, but then changed his story. Said he was in the general vicinity, testing walkie-talkies with a friend named Alfred.
Testing walkie-talkies, huh? Not exactly an airtight alibi?
Nope. And gets even weirder. The day Joe disappeared, Joshua decided to give his Cadillac a full detailing, inside and out, in February, in Connecticut.
Now that's suspicious. A little too thorough, don't you think?
You bet. And when the police searched his car, the back seat and trunk were still damp. Joshua claimed it was because of leaks, but even so, why the deep clean in the middle of winter?
It's like he was trying to wash away something more than just dirt, if you know what I mean. So now we've got a tangled web, folks. A jealous ex-husband, a potentially vengeful brother-in-law, and a friend who seems to be along for a very dangerous ride.
Don't forget the missing gun, the whispers of mob connections, and a community on edge. But remember, at this point, Joe is still missing. It's not until a month later, March 8th, that a grim discovery changes everything.
Oh man, this is where it gets real. Hit me with it.
A highway worker in North Salem, New York, finds a body hidden behind a stone wall. It's Joe, shot 6 times.
Yeah.
And guess what was tied around his head?
Don't tell me. A blanket.
A blanket, secured with green twine. Eerily similar to Fernando's thread, right?
Chills, man, chills. And I bet that blanket became a key piece of evidence.
You bet it did. The police traced it back to Alfred's father. Turns out, Alfred's mother had given him that very blanket.
Whoa, so we're connecting Alfred directly to the crime scene now. And what about that Cadillac? Any other surprises lurking in there?
Oh, yeah. The forensic team found fibers matching the blanket and the green twine inside the car, along with some hairs that were microscopically similar to Joe's.
Damn. It's all starting to point towards Joshua and Alfred. But hold on, I thought you said this case went cold.
It did. Despite what looks like a mountain of evidence, no arrests were ever
Hey,
made.
how is that even possible? What happened?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And that's what we're going to dig into next. The story of Joe Pelichi's unsolved murder is far from over.
You know, it's like we've got all these pieces laid out, right? A jealous ex, a brother-in-law with a motive, even evidence tying a friend to the scene, but the picture, it just wouldn't come together.
It's like someone scattered the puzzle pieces, and not all of them even belong. So Alfred says, no deal to the immunity offer. What happens next? Did the police just give up?
I wouldn't say give up exactly, but things definitely took a turn, and this is where the whole thing gets a bit murky, a bit, well, corrupt, to be honest.
Corrupt. Hold on, are we talking about good old Lieutenant Larry Hogan here? The one leading the investigation? The one Tony, Joe's sister, said was acting weird around her?
Ding, 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 we have a winner!
Hogan, see, he wasn't exactly known for his, shall we say, by-the-book approach to police work.
Okay, spill the tea. What's the dirt on Hogan?
Let's just say Stamford in the 70s, organized crime had its hooks in deep. Gambino family, Genovese family, you name it, they had a presence. And Hogan, well, let's just say he wasn't exactly immune to their influence.
Wait, you're saying the cop in charge of investigating a possible mob-related murder was potentially in bed with the mob?
It's a theory that's been floated around for years, and not without some pretty compelling evidence. Okay, so Hogan's maybe on the take, but what about the New York State Police? Joe was found in their jurisdiction. Why didn't they step up and make an arrest?
Good question. And that's another piece of this puzzle that just doesn't quite fit. Communication between Stamford PD and the New York State Police. Let's just say it wasn't exactly smooth sailing. Jurisdictional issues, maybe a lack of trust in the information coming out of Stamford, who knows?
So we've got a potentially compromised investigation on one side and a lack of cooperation on the other. But even with all that, the evidence, the physical stuff, you'd think that would have been enough to move the needle.
You would think so, but then comes a real kicker. You ready for this? That blanket, the one found with Joe, the one traced back to Alfred, it vanished.
Vanished. Poof. Gone. What are we talking about here?
You heard right. The blanket, a key piece of evidence linking Alfred and possibly Joshua to the crime scene, it up and disappeared. They went to retrieve it in 2000, new DNA tech and all, hoping to find something, but it was gone. No record, no explanation.
Are you kidding me? They lost the one thing that could have blown this case wide open. What about the other evidence? The stuff from the Cadillac? Was that lost too?
Nope, thankfully that's still around, fibers, hair, the works. But that blanket, it was the smoking gun, literally. And its disappearance, well, let's just say it raises a whole lot of uncomfortable questions. Cover-up, incompetence. Who knows? but it definitely stinks.
So to recap, we've got motives galore, a suspect tied to the scene, and then bam, the evidence walks away. No wonder this case went cold. What about the players, though? Where are they now?
Oh, Alfred, sadly, passed away in 1997. Joshua, though, still kicking around Stamford. In fact, there was a rather chilling encounter a few years back between him and Butch, the Stamford cop who married Tony, Joe's sister. Remember Butch, the one who's been fighting to get the case reopened?
Yeah, Butch, what a guy. Still going strong, fighting for his brother-in-law after all these years. What happened?
Butch runs into Joshua at the grocery store, of all places, and just lays into him, calls him a murderer. Joshua's response, cool as a cucumber, he just says, prove it in court.
Chilling. Absolutely chilling. So Joshua's out there living his life, and Joe's family is still searching for answers. What about Frances, Joe's wife? Where does she fit into all of this?
Ah, Frances. She's a bit of an enigma in all this. At first, she stood by her brother Joshua, defended him, said he'd never do such a thing. But then later, she kind of changed her tune, started expressing doubts, saying maybe he was involved after all.
So did she know something? Was she protecting him?
That's the million-dollar question. No one really knows what she knew or didn't know. And Fernando, the ex-husband with the temper and the threats, what about him? Did they ever circle back to him after finding Joe's body, behind a wall, just like he said? Sadly, no. It seems once the focus shifted to Joshua and Alfred, Fernando kind of faded into the background. Whether that was a conscious decision by investigators or just a consequence of the whole messy investigation, no one can say for sure.
So here we are, 50 years later, and Joe's family is still left wondering who killed him and why. It just doesn't seem right. Is there any hope this case will ever be solved?
That's the big question, isn't it? And it's a question that brings us to the heart of what we're talking about today.
It's a story that just stays with you, doesn't it? A life cut short, a family left in pieces, and a town forever marked by this unsolved crime. You gotta wonder, after all this time, does the Pelichi family still hold out hope?
Oh, absolutely. They've never given up hope, not for a second. 50 years, they've kept Joe's memory alive, not just within the family, but in the community, too. It's really a testament to their strength, their resilience.
It's like a reminder that behind all the headlines, the theories, the speculation, there are real people hurting, still searching for answers. So what can be done? Is there any chance, after all this time, that this case could actually be solved?
Well, officially, the Stamford PD considers it open but inactive, which basically means they need something new, a fresh lead, a piece of information that could breathe some life back into the investigation.
So what can our listeners do? How can we help make sure Joe's story isn't forgotten, that the search for justice continues?
That's the thing about cold cases. Sometimes it's the smallest detail, a memory that seemed insignificant at the time. That could be the key. If anyone out there remembers anything from that period in Stamford, anything that seemed off, any rumors they heard, no matter how small, it's worth reaching out to the Stamford Police Department.
It's never too late, right? 50 years is a long time, but it doesn't erase what happened. And it certainly doesn't diminish the pain Joe's family still carries. This deep dive, it's been a journey, hasn't it? Through this tangled web of relationships, this time and place where the lines between right and wrong, legal and illegal, seem to blur.
It really has. And what strikes me is that this case, it's about more than just solving a crime. It's about that erosion of trust that happens when the people who are supposed to uphold the law are caught up in something shady. It's about the lasting impact of organized crime on a community. But most importantly, it's about a family's love, their unwavering determination to see justice done.
Joe Pelichi's story, it reminds us that the search for truth can be long, it can be frustrating, but it's a search worth undertaking for the sake of the victims, for the hope that justice, even if it's delayed, can still prevail. If you're like us, fascinated by these stories, these mysteries that dig into the darkest corners of history, the complexities of human nature, well, make sure you hit that subscribe button for the deep dive. We'll be back with more in-depth explorations, more stories that need to be told, always seeking to shed light on the shadows, give voice to those who have been silenced.